Hello and welcome to the final video for week 3 of CIS 224 Data and Information course. Last video we were talking about the group by clause. And I got a little bit of egg on my face by making the assumption that Access would allow you to do positional numbering for the group by clause. It does not. The reason I made that assumption is because it allows you to do it for the order by clause. In ANSI SQL, you are able to do positional numbering for the group by clause, but not in Access. So again, if we're looking at this, the script we were looking at before, we have to do a group by for the course number because it is not aggregated. But we are going to have to spell it out. Again, if we look at the order by, we are able to do it by positioning. If we click the view, it does pull it back. Again, we have our count of grades for the courses, and then we have the courses done in alphabetical order or ascending order. So I apologize for that mistake. But I guess I will not do any more assumptions with Access, or as they say, Microsoft happens. So that solved, let's move on to the having clause in the SQL statement. So the having clause is another way for us to be able to add criteria to our SQL statement. It has to be done by naming the columns. You can't do it by positional. The having clause should reference an aggregated value. The where clause, if you have one, you don't have to have one, as we'll see in the examples that we have. If it does, it has to do reference non-aggregated. So if we look at this one again, the same script. If we were going to do anything with the course number, so if we were going to say where the course number is a specific course, so course number is accounting 210 section 01, we would put that in the where clause. But the where clause cannot do add a criteria to an aggregated column that we do. And the reason is that in the way SQL, the database engine looks at the SQL, it hasn't, in its mind, it has not done the counting or completed the counting by the time it gets to the where clause. So knowing this, we have the having clause that allows us to do add a criteria to an aggregated column. So if we look at this, how it looks in ANSI SQL, we have select department number, and we're summing the salary amount for each employee from the employee table. So we have the group by. Here we can do it by position number because it's in ANSI SQL. We do not have to have a where clause. We could go directly to the having if we wanted to. But if we wanted to do add a criteria to the non-aggregated, in this case the department number, we could do that in the where clause. So here we're looking for departments 401 and 402. We would not be able to say, you couldn't say and sum is greater than 100,000. You have to put the having in there. And this is just the way the database engine reads the script and the order in which it reads the script. So you would do having sum where the salary is greater than 100,000. So how does this work in Access? And we'll stay with our script since we have most of it typed out. Again, we would have to do, after the group by, we're not going to put a where clause in, so we can see that we don't need that. If we do having count E grade, you have to say what it is, the type of aggregation that you're doing. So we could potentially do a sum off of E-grade because it is a number field. There's other aggregations that we could do on the E-grade and in the same select. So in order for this database engine to understand which aggregation you're doing, you have to spell it out for it, or which one you're calling out. So let's say where it's greater than 2. So where the grade count is greater than 2. So if we look at the enrollment table, I put the courses in ascending order so they're grouped together. It's a little easier for us to read. But if you look at this, the accounting 210 doesn't have any grades, neither does biology 101. Biology 400 does, but it only has 2, so it shouldn't appear in our script. CIS 500 has 3, so it should appear in our script. We should get 1 result back. And then if we look down, no other course has more than 2 grades. So that should be what we get. And if we look at the data view, sure enough, that's what we get with the count of grades. So again, the having clause has to go after the group by. It has to be done on a aggregated field. So let's look at another example. We'll go to the student table for this one. Let's type this out. Let's do the start date. That down below so it doesn't get lost. Do the start date, and then we'll do count start date. And we'll call that as count from the student table. And we're going to say having, we'll have to do the group by clause first. Having, let's take a look at the table. So we're going to do a count on how many students are in for each start date. So August 30th should have 5. Let's say where they have more than 2. Let's just stick with the number 2. So where the count of start date is greater than 2. So if we go back to our table, Wednesday should be there, Tuesday should be there, Sunday should be there. Tuesday, August 30th should not. Monday, May 30th should not. Sunday, August 30th should be there. Saturday, May 30th should not be there, nor January 15th. So if we run the script, sure enough, that's what we get. We have all of our courses that have 3 or more students that started on that date. So that's the having clause. Again, I just reiterate that it has to be on an aggregated column, and it should be after the group by clause. You don't need a where clause, but you can have one if you use that for in your script. So the last thing I'd like to cover for this week with SQL is using like. Here's another example of Access and ANSI SQL differ a little bit. And ANSI SQL uses the %sign, whereas Access uses the asterisk, and we'll go through the scripts in that. But this is where it would be if you are searching for something and you're not quite sure how it's spelled out, but you know it contains a certain number of characters or certain letters in it. So if you were looking for anyone with the last name that has IL in it. This is how you would go about doing it if you knew that the two letters are going through. So what these percent sign is the wild card. So what you're saying is it can have any number of characters before IL, and it can have any number of characters after IL, as long as it has an I and an L next to each other in that order. Pull me back everybody who has that last name. So it's a really good use if you are trying to pull in a bunch of stuff that says, say you have a long code, but you want any of them that have AB in it. If you don't care where it is, as long as it's somewhere in that code, you want it. Now, you can change this by not putting the wildcard in the front. So if you know it starts with AB and it has a bunch of numbers after it, but you really don't care, you just want all of them that have an AB starting with, you would remove the wildcard. So you would just do parentheses AB and then the wildcard afterwards. And again, it could go the other way. So if you know it ends in AB, you could remove one of those wildcards. You don't have to have wildcards on either side of them. So let's take a look at Access and how Access handles this. Again, it looks at it from a little different view. So let's stay with the student. Let's get rid of some of this in here. This time let's pull first and last name. And we'll do like first name has OH in it. So if we eyeball this, John should appear, and our other John, and that should be it. So we should get two results if we do this correctly. So if we go back into the design view here, like statement is in the where clause. So we do where s dot first name like. Just as a side note, as I'm thinking about this, so another difference between Access and most of the database applications that you'll use to run your scripts, the keywords are in blue, and I think we may have talked about this before. So select, from, where, if you did count, it's on there, like. Those are all keywords, and they're marked as blue because they are keywords. They're not something that you can, and you can't use keywords to create columns. So you could not create a column called like, for example. So that just as a side note. So we're going to look for, and again, we use the asterisk for the wildcard and not the percent sign. We do OH, asterisk, and double quotes. And if we run this, we get our two Johns in here. So Access is a little bit different from ANSI SQL in this regard. Let's look at one more like statement, and then we'll call it a video. This time, let's use one that we haven't used before. Let's look at the service table. So the service table, we have different offers that we can give the customer. And let's say that we don't know which offer we want. We just know that we want HSD or high-speed internet in it. So if we change this, and I'm using the service table for a reason, and I will show you in a moment. Get rid of that. And from the service table, let's pull customer number service table. Now, you'll see that the service table, the automatic that you might want to put in for an alias is S, and that's perfectly fine. It would work. Everything would be fine. The problem is, what if you were joining the student table and the service table? You couldn't use S for both of them. You would have to do something different. So this goes back into with standardizations and looking at them that way. So you would want to make sure that if there was anything that you would want to name the table. So we have several tables that we can't always use the same one, and we use delineate one of them for here. So since we've used the student table a whole lot, we've given it an alias of S all the way through, we're going to give the service table an alias of SE. And again, you could type in as much as you want. An alias can have one or many characters for it. So let's do where SE current offer like, and we can use single quotes, asterisk HSD, single quote. So if we look at our service table, we should get, since we're pulling customer number, we should get all of these customers that have the blast. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if we run this right. And I do not have a comma in front of that. And then we go with the 6 with the blast. So like statements are very good if you're not quite sure of what it is that you need to pull, but you have a general idea of what the code, the number, or the characters might be, or have some idea. You can put a wildcard in the front. You can put the wildcard in the back, and it helps you do some searching that way. So that is the final video for week 3. You made it.